Good evening, friends, and welcome to a special edition of Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed Wallace. For those of you who are new here, we are retired New York City police detectives and 9/11 World Trade Center first responders. If you like all things true crime related from the police detective's perspective, you're in the right spot. Hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, so you get all things DutyRon and my partner in crime, Ed Wallace, when we go live or upload another video. Tonight, we have a special treat. These two gentlemen are half of the team that represented and defended Karen Reed. We have Bob Alessi and Dave Yannetti. These two gentlemen, we've been watching them. We all here are honored and proud to have them join us. Ed, your thoughts on tonight? I was excited all day. I don't know about you, but at 61, there's not a lot gets me excited. I was excited for these guys. What are your thoughts?
It's an honor and a privilege to have them on our show. I mean, they just are doing the circuit. They did 3 other content providers on YouTube, but they're lawyers, but we're detectives. So now it's going to be a different type of show for them. Okay. So I'm very excited, very excited.
Yeah, and I love that they were willing to come on with us and talk about the forensic side, because again, like you said, we heard about the law, we heard about everything that pertains to, you know, how they went about defending Karen Reed, and they had a lot of help. Let's be honest, we had a lot of help from the responding police, the initial response, the prosecutor, their witnesses that they called. There was a lot of how can I say this nicely? There was a lot of wow moments in this trial when we listen to some of these experts or the lack thereof give testimony. But Ed, why don't you introduce our friends?
Okay, folks, waiting backstage, we have Bob Alessi and David Yannetti from the Karen Reed case. And we were honored and privileged that they're here with us and our subscribers. So thank you, gentlemen, for being here.
Thanks so much for having us on. I mean, I heard the intro, and really the honor and privilege is ours. I mean, 2 first responders to 9/11, which strikes, very close to my heart. You guys are the heroes.
I don't know about that, but thank you. You guys did a great job. I followed the entire trial. I have a spiral notebook filled with notes, watching every day of the trial. From the prosecution's case in chief and then the defense case in chief. I got to tell you though, folks, I thought the roles were kind of flipped here in this trial. I thought you were the prosecution proving your case, which wasn't your job, by the way, right? It's the burden of proof is on the prosecution. And it seems to me that you proved your client innocent. And listening to what several members of the jury who have given interviews are saying, you did a great job, because that's exactly what they're saying. They're not saying not guilty. They're saying innocent. You proved that she did not commit this crime. And my hat's off to you, because it seemed like this trial was upside down and backwards.
Yeah.
Well, there's no doubt that there were a lot of unique aspects of this trial. You hit the nail on the head. We all know the presumption of innocence, and that it's the prosecution's duty to prove their case and every element of it beyond a reasonable doubt and to a moral certainty. We viewed our role as assisting the jury, providing expert, honest facts and other evidence to the jury. So our Karen Reed was innocent, she is innocent, and we knew from the pre-trial that with regard to this prosecution that we were going to have to do things a little bit differently than perhaps most to get that point across. And so we never took on the burden. We were very careful to not shift burden, but we knew there were several unique aspects of this, and we believe we had the best experts, we had the best facts, and we had the best evidence, and we're delighted that the jury concluded that, and hopefully the broader community that we so much respect and appreciate their support, they concluded that as well.
Hey, Dave and Bob, I want to just say quickly, I mean, first and foremost, you got Bob, you're from New York. Dave, we love Boston. I get to Boston as much as I can. We get down there. Anytime my Mets play the Red Sox, I'm there. I'm not a Yankee fan. I'm a Mets fan. So
Can we not talk about 1986 then? Can you not bring that up?
I wasn't going to bring it up, but yeah, poor Buckner. But so the bottom line is we want to get it out there and clear that we have nothing but love for the state of Massachusetts. It's a great place to visit. I get there as often as I can, but it just made me so proud that there was a New York attorney, an attorney from Boston, right in that area locally, and then an attorney from California. So we had, and we can't forget about Miss Little, you know, so, and you had a whole bunch of people behind the scenes. But I wanted to, just before I toss it to Ed, just say that, you know, not only this online community, you guys had support worldwide, as you know, but there was that community that showed up, the locals that were like outraged that Karen Reed was being railroaded. And I'm using these terms that I normally wouldn't use, but these are the terms that we're hearing, and it is there on TV for everybody to see. And to have you guys get up there, and from the police side and from us viewing it, we know the right way to do things. And what we saw from the beginning to the end of this thing, it was a cluster F. And I'm trying to be, you know, nice about this because a lot of people don't like the cursing, but I love to curse. But it was a cluster F. And the bottom line is you guys went out there and you broke it down for this second jury, the second time around. You did it the first time. You did it great. But you broke it down for this jury, and they spoke. And they spoke loud and clear after 4 days. Ed, I'll throw it over to you.
Yeah, I mean, especially after what transpired with a recent statement from Prosecutor Brennan. I was very disappointed in that last statement that he had made, because all prosecutions, regardless of where it occurs, is done in the name of the people, okay, of that community. So it's the Commonwealth versus, or it's New York State versus, right? And everything is supposed to be about achieving justice for the people of this community, okay? And what I saw here, and what really got my goat, is an injustice being perpetrated by the people that were sworn oath to serve and protect us, okay? Whether it was law enforcement or the prosecutor, in this case, it seemed to be both. And we call balls and strikes here. And, you know, and that sometimes people don't like that. And I'm sorry, I'm a forensics person, I'm a science guy. Science doesn't take sides. It is what it is. It's either right or it's wrong, okay? And I don't care if the prosecution hires me or the defense hires me, the work is going to be the same, and the answer is going to be the same, no matter who hires me, right? So I was really disturbed by everything I saw here, and I know you must have felt it too. You saw it. You know, I could see it in the way you were representing your client, the zeal and the vigor that you were displaying in your defense of Karen Reed. It was evident for everybody to see that this was very personal to you all. And what are your thoughts on that?
Over to Bob.
Well, you know, in terms of Attorney Brennan, in terms of the proceedings, my general perspective in any matter, but particularly this one, was we had to take whatever was in front of us and get the job done. We fought everything, as you stated, with zeal, a lot of preparation. There were a lot of things that were coming at us, sometimes right on the spot, the hoodie sweatshirt, and we responded. The best way, from my point of view, is to anticipate the bad bounce, so to speak, and just make sure that you're ready and pounce as soon as you need to. In this case, maybe more than any that I've been involved in, you had to invoke those skills and have that mindset. We knew what was just. These charges were unjust. They proved to be unjust and unwarranted, but nonetheless, that's what was in front of us. And so we had to move ahead and knock down anything that got in our way and in the way of the objective here. in terms of the matter. And I will add to your excellent point about the worldwide community, and David can speak more to this. I've coined the phrase, everybody loves Yannetti, and everybody does love Yannetti. So he can speak perhaps more aptly to that. But that community support, that motivated us, it exhilarated us, and gave us all the more zeal. And that was very, very important to us.
David?
So you mentioned that it seemed to be personal to us. And that's a smart observation. And I think, what contributed to it was the fact that this had gone on for 3.5 years. I mean, I spent just about as much time working this case as I did going to college. This is another chapter in my life. And for much of that time, the legal team and Karen, we were all living together in the same hotel. It was 24/7 preparation, eating, and sleeping. And sometimes Bob and I would sneak away to the gym, but we were all in it together, and it was very personal. And the other aspect of it was that after the first mistrial, the district attorney came out with a statement essentially saying that he was going to continue to try to convict Karen Reed no matter how long it took. So, immediately after the verdict, I was thinking all along, particularly with the way the case went in, that we were not going to lose. I could not envision a scenario where this jury convicted her of anything more serious than misdemeanor first offense DUI. I just couldn't. I couldn't envision that. Of course, when they're reading the verdict slip, I'm braced for the worst, and it's just an irrational, fear and an irrational few moments when you're so thirsting for that not guilty verdict. But immediately after the trial, I gave an interview and said that the thing I was most afraid of was another mistrial. Because it's been exhausting, it's been draining. We gave it everything that we had, and I was, very fearful that he would make good on his promise to put her through this again. So it was just a huge relief when that didn't happen.
I want to add. I don't want to cut you off. Just one thing I want to add to what Dave just said. You saw the emotion in court, and there was many people who speculated that you were praying or what you were doing with your eyes closed, but you could see the emotion come over you after it was all said and done. And then you did something that was so interesting, is kind of, you looked around and you grabbed this guy to your right, and you picked him up and hugged him, Bob, right?
You sure did.
Yeah. I still laugh about that. I just was, I was not in control of my emotions. I didn't want to be the guy that cried at counsel table. Have my client console me. You could see her like patting my neck, and then she had to hug me as I'm like wiping tears out of my eyes. It was a big time emotional moment. I'm with the number of cases that you guys have handled, I know that it's been personal for you a lot of the time. And, I worked in law enforcement for 10 years, and I know that, when you're dealing with, a victim's family, particularly with regard to a homicide, you do not want to fail them. And I'm sure that you had similar emotions, and that probably you hearken back to that when you could see me overcome with emotions, So, yeah, I went from, tears to like elation. Bob's become one of my best friends, and I wanted to pick him up and throw him in the air like I would when my kids were little, So
yeah, that was great. Are you still on that rush? Are you still on that high? The adrenaline still pumping that you got this great victory for your client?
It's this sort of YouTube tour that we're doing has been very therapeutic for me. It's almost like a baseball. I don't want to make a crass analogy, but a baseball team that wins the championship, and they're in the locker room every day with their brother ball players, and what a high it is. And it's you know, despite the fact that they're going back to their families, it's got to be a little bit of a letdown. So this, you know, these appearances that we're doing, and thank you again for having us on the show tonight. I can't speak for Bob, but it's allowing me to kind of process this, you know. And I've been in court, a few different courts, you know, since the verdict, and it's you know, we're so insulated during the trial. We're kept, you know, from all the publicity, and we're focusing on the job at hand. And I'm starting to realize now just how big it was, because people are, you know, recognizing me in the courthouse and all, and 99% of the people that approach me are all supportive. So it's been very gratifying.
Bob, I'd like to ask you a question, because like it takes years to become a subject matter expert in forensic disciplines. I'm a lifelong learner, and I'm still learning and still becoming educated in my forensic disciplines. I have to maintain continuing education for my certifications in the various forensic disciplines that I practice. And it is a practice, much like being a lawyer. I told this to my audience numerous times. I feel that for forensics, we should be licensed like any other professional in the state, whether it's a lawyer, doctor, therapist, or whatever the case may be, and have a governing body of ethics, and where you can, you know, go to and get disciplined if you do something wrong, if you don't follow the standards, and so forth and so on. Unfortunately, we're not there yet in our country, and the standards, there are international standards, and I practice them, I teach them around the world and here in the United States. And unfortunately, certain jurisdictions don't seem to follow them. As when I was witnessing this case and what was coming out, I was mortified. But Bob, you grasped all these medical and forensic concepts of and all the protocols and procedures, and you came off as a subject matter expert when you were cross-examining the prosecution and your own subject matter experts. And I was just astonished with your ability to grasp all these concepts and knowledge that you had attained. How do you do it?
Thank you. Well, that's a high compliment coming from you. You're at the very top of your game, and you know the only way, and I'm never going to get to your level, but the only way I get to approximate it is just to immerse yourself in the subject matter, read everything you can on it. As you may know, I have a technical background. I went to pharmacy school first and became a licensed pharmacist, to your point about being licensed. So I've had every chemistry, physics, calculus, you name it, known to man. So, but I also, of course, went to law school, and those two are just two separate parts of the brain. And so I love the technical aspect, and anytime you love what you're doing, and you made another excellent point, which is lifelong learning. If you have the humility and the modesty to know that it is a lifelong process, you're never there, you keep thirsting and you keep hungry for more knowledge. And so on this particular trial, as David knows, we won't tell you how we split up the team, but we did, and I knew what my job was. And I am on a team with the best lawyers in the country, and that was another motivation for me to make sure I learned it. So how did I do it? I grabbed everything I possibly could, made sure I knew the facts, the evidence, frontwards and backwards, and then, you know, read as much as I possibly could. I wish I would have had your cell phone number because I could have done better. But I just immersed myself in it, and that's what I've done all my career. I've handled a number of high stakes cases where there's subject matter you just got to learn. And I will tell you two things that accelerate it: fear and being in the public domain. Those are also great motivators. So I can't tell you the specifics of how I did it. Thank God. I'm a very religious person, and God basically allowed me, as I usually do, to not get much sleep. So I had more time than most to spend during my days and nights to learn it. But the bottom line is, I've been doing all my life learning technical areas, And this was just another challenge in that regard. And fortunately, I was able to meet it somewhat. But just time, effort, motivation, determination, and the stakes couldn't be higher, which is additional motivation.
So you and I seem
Can
to
I
have,
add to that?
yes,
Ed,
please, Dave, jump in.
I don't want to interrupt you, but you know, Bob is he's good at so much except tooting his own horn. You know, he's too humble. The two things I'd like to say is that first of all, I knew going into this trial that Bob Alessi is probably the leading trial lawyer in the country when it comes to examining experts, both on direct and cross-examination. You know, there were Daubert hearings that needed to be done, voir dires before trial, and I had no doubt he was going to win every single one of those, and he did. Secondly, yes, he does have the medical background, and he's, you know, when it came to cross-examination of medical experts, I think any expert that he's questioning learns very quickly that they can't snow him. He knows the subject matter, and that kept guardrails up such that an expert really could not, you know, go beyond the bounds of science and the bounds of truth. However, Bob had never examined a computer forensic expert in his career prior to this case. That was all him studying, getting up to speed, and hitting the ball out of the park with regard to a subject that was essentially foreign to him before the trial. So I just thought that was remarkable. We were so lucky to have him.
Yeah, and you could see it. You could see it in Bob's work, in his cross-examination, and that he had obtained a level of subject matter expertise that most lawyers don't have. Okay, and I could see it was, you know, you and I are very similar. Okay, you want to give a shout out to your pharmacy school? Which one did you go to?
Yeah, I went to Union University, Albany College of Pharmacy. Fantastic school, fantastic education. It was brutally tough, but I'm glad that I went through. It was excellent. Thank you for allowing me to shout out to them.
Yes, I thought maybe St. John's Pharmacy School, because you were in New
Another
York,
great pharmacy school.
Yeah,
yeah.
But I too, I'm third generation NYPD, but I didn't come by NYPD the normal route. I graduated from Pratt Institute School of Architecture. Okay, so I have an architecture and engineering background, and all of that helped me in my forensics with the math, the physics, the science. And I fell in love with forensics, and you had the forensics on your side, Dave, Bob. You had the science and the medical findings on your side to prove Karen innocent, and nothing the prosecution could do could take that away from you. Okay, because we say here all the time, trust the science. Science don't lie. People lie. Science don't lie.
We actually have merchandise that says that. Shirts. People requested them. We made shirts. Bob, you at 2 points in this retrial, you called for a mistrial. I want to just take a minute. It's only going to be a minute because I value the time that I have you guys both here. But I have to toot your horn a little bit for yourself right now by showing this little video. So let's take a moment to enjoy this.
Defense moves for a mistrial with prejudice based upon intentional misconduct that just occurred before the court and for the jury. This regards questioning and representations in questioning by Mr. Brennan. These two documents are from the criminalist file, specifically Ms. Maureen Hartnett's notes regarding cuttings from the hoodie sweatshirt that's in the crime lab file folder.
Give me a minute to read this, Mr. Alessi.
Yes,
So is it that there are no holes in the back? There were no holes in the back of the sweatshirt?
that's only part of it, but that is in fact the case, Your Honor.
Okay.
You were not.
So I want to fast forward because another moment in your cross-examination involved Dr. Welcher. And he made some statements about Miss Reed's car being able to go to outer space. And this was one of the funnier moments for me as it pertains to your job and what you did, because there was a ton with Mr. Jackson, there was some with Mr. Yannetti, but at the end of the day, this is the one that Ed and I actually were belly chuck. We were laughing our asses off. This was comical, so I have to play this.
I think it's possible that it could have been shot off into space, sir.
As an engineer, it's a possibility.
It's a possibility that
Absolutely.
this Lexus could have been shot up into space.
Highly, highly unlikely. But
All right.
again, you're asking an engineer about possibilities and probabilities.
Let's get back to reality. The intention.
That was amazing. Bob, I have to ask you, before we get into our forensics, we're going to start at 34 Fairview, Ed and I, and you two, we discussed this before we went live. Feel free to ask Ed any forensic or any questions as it pertains to crime scene evidence preservation, because he's processed over 2,600 crime scenes in his career in the NYPD, arguably the best police department in the world. Bob, please, what was your thoughts when Dr. Welcher said that to you and you asked him to come back down to reality?
Well, you know, my thoughts were he was obviously a very challenging witness, and you never know at the moment how the jury is going to view him. For example, they're going to view him as someone who's very knowledgeable, a biomechanist, or are they going to view him as a person who is not serving them by providing them with useful information upon which they can make a decision? So what was going in through my head at the moment he said that the Lexus could sort of jettison itself into space? You know, as a cross-examiner, you got to think very quickly on your feet, especially with a witness like this. You got to be very alert. Sometimes attorneys are looking at their notes, just trying to get the next question straight. I'm quite the opposite. I'm very tuned in to what the witness is saying, what the witness is doing. So I was very, very on high alert with Dr. Welcher, because he said a number of things that were, to say the least, catching my attention. So when he said that, it was really, first thought was, what a gift to us that he's literally saying that it's possible that the Lexus could have jettisoned itself into space. And so what I wanted to do was to avoid getting too much in that logical mud with him, and then just trying to bring him back. And frankly, at that point, it was simply reaction. It wasn't thought. My saying, let's get back to reality, was simply maybe something that any one of your viewers would have said to somebody sitting in their living room. And that's the way I treated that situation. A much shorter answer for when you played the clip of me making the argument for the mistrial. And I was so adversely affected and disappointed in what had happened with the hoodie sweatshirt, that stunt that was performed. I was so mad, not in the sense of a common person's mad, but intellectually mad, intellectually insulted. But I was also felt, you know, my heart breaking for justice, because the jury was misled. That I just gave that whole argument, as you might have seen, it was top of the head. The team grabbed the relevant documents that I wanted to have for that argument. But I also have to make an apology to the forensic scientist, and particularly Ed. I was so into that argument that I forgot to take off the black gloves. So people all thought that was theater, that was intended. I just forgot to take them off. So here I am, you know, trying to follow protocol for proper contamination and everything. And I basically got the gloves on, and I'm like handling documents, etc. And so with apologies to you, Ed, but that was all passion, not thought.
No, I understood that perfectly, but I did bring it up to our audience that, you know, you're cross-contaminating all your paperwork at the podium and so forth and so on.
No, stop.
And I was like, ah! And anyhow, but Dave, let's stick with this. I have to ask you, because I've never seen this as someone who's been declared an expert by a judge to give opinion, because that's what an expert is supposed to do, give opinion evidence. I've never seen an expert allowed to work on their computer while they're on the stand and actually in real time change his PowerPoint presentation that's being used as evidence in real time from the stand. And he's writing notes with a pencil.
And he amended things on the stand because of the judge's rulings.
Is that commonplace?
I've never seen that before. You know, I will say that, you know, I've spoken about, you know, sort of the trial psychosis that lawyers go through in terms of this, you know, paranoia that everybody in the courtroom's against you and you're just fighting for your lives, you know. So, you know, in the moment, I think that everything is suspicious. And I wondered, you know, is he communicating with someone? Or is he sending emails? Is somebody feeding him lines? I didn't know what was going on. So, yeah, that's unusual. I don't think that I have ever seen that before. I mean, maybe it's just a function of modern technology, and I'm, you know, still, you know, getting used to these PowerPoint displays and, you know, people controlling them from the witness stand. But no, I haven't seen that before.
But it's not common. It's not common in the Commonwealth to allow that to happen, right?
No, I mean, I think there's a lot about this case that I don't know that you can generalize that it happens all over the Commonwealth. I think this case was a unicorn in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Because in New York, I can only bring my photographs, my notes, and my report onto the stand. And I have to always ask permission to review any of those documents while I'm on the stand to refresh my memory with my testimony. I'm not allowed. I mean, because honestly, he could have been conversing with somebody, because he even made a statement to the judge about, I get emails all the time. I mean,
right. Yeah, no, Ed, what you just described has always been my experience. You have to ask permission before you consult anything, even if it's with you on the stand.
Yeah.
That had always been my experience too.
And I'll go one step further, Dave and Bob. Dr. Welcher, at one point when Bob was cross-examining him, he said to Bob, go to the next slide. And Mr. Alessi, you are a consummate professional and a gentleman. You handled him so well with the sirs and with your responses. But at that point, when I listened to that, and I was listening quite a bit today, I did a lot of debrief on this, you really were pissed off when he was telling you what to do. And you said, I get to say when we go forward and what we do, not you. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, you know, to me, I have a certain style of cross-examination with experts. I try to take the higher road, and as you know, to try to be a consummate professional, because I believe the jury wants that to happen with experts so that they can get information. And just like two doctors would sit, you know, in a conference and talk, I think jurors have a reasonable expectation of how they comport themselves, the demeanor that they have. But after going through what I went through the first day with Dr. Welcher, and the jury wasn't getting answers and information I thought they deserved, I realized that typical way had to change. And I came in with a much different perspective, and you gave an excellent example. And what was going through my mind was, I thought I had a duty to the jury to not let what happened day one happen day two. So I was very firm, and some people have called me a legal chameleon. I prefer to do it the way I typically do it, but I'm also a boxer. And, you know, if you want to hit below the belt, then I'm going to come in and I'm going to hit you below the belt. I don't think anything I did was below the belt, but I'm going to give you a couple body shots. I'm going to give you a straight right, and I'm going to wake you up, and I'm going to let you know that that's just not going to occur. And that's the mentality that I went in with. And other point is, apropos to what we were just talking about, 3 times I asked the judge to tell him to stop looking at his electronics. I asked the judge in the beginning of the morning, yeah, please also have him, you know, take off his smartwatch that he had on, that to me looked like he was receiving information, whether it was just ordinary course of emails, nothing to do with this case or not. I had hoped that the judge would have enforced that a little bit better because I had to keep going back to it. But, you know, those are just the challenges of trials, and you just have to be dogged. I certainly had a different perspective, and I was much firmer, and I was much more dogged than I even usually am the second day. And I think you saw a different type of examination.
Yeah, I'm just going to say this, and we're going to put this to bed with this guy. He was quite eccentric and unprofessional, in my opinion. With that said, I'd like to push us towards the initial response. In my career, I sought out peer review and have people look at what I do and give me feedback. Okay. The only way you're ever going to get better at something is to always try to evaluate what you've done and get your peers, thoughts and processes about what you've done to make yourself better. Now as I said, we call balls and strikes here. So from the initial response, there were so many things that were out of the norm for what I would have done or what Ron would have done as patrol officers responding to a 911 call like this. I mean, we would have taken charge of the scene. We would have separated all the witnesses that were there. We would have called for a supervisor, got back up. We would have made entry into the house for a well-being check to see what's going on in the house. How come nobody's out here from the house? Especially if we knew that the occupant of the house was also a cop. Okay. And you know, what's going on there, right? None of that occurred here. And we were like baffled. And then finally, we had a sergeant come, and then Lieutenant Leafblower showed up. And then he sent the sergeant back to his house to get a leaf blower. Nobody thought to call the crime scene unit. And then when they called the state police, apparently they didn't articulate properly that they had a crime scene, because as the Lieutenant Leafblower said, he didn't know he didn't have a crime scene. Here's the way it works. You have a crime scene until you don't.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you treat it as an assault, as a homicide, whatever the case may be, a murder, until it's proven not to be.
Right.
Okay.
And nobody
That's such a good point. That's such a good
comes
point.
and goes from the location. You canvass the homes on either side, across the street, behind the house. They did none of the sort. There was no interviewing. There was no video canvassing. There was a video that Lieutenant Gallagher, we'll call him Leaf Blower, but Lieutenant Gallagher said his boss, I know from doing, what did he say? For running errands for him, that it doesn't catch the street. Well, no, you take everything and anything when it pertains to a homicide investigation, especially if it involves a homicide of a police officer off duty. And that's the first red flag for us. And Ed, I'll let you continue on with your point, but for you gentlemen here, this is investigation 101. This is taught in the police academy at the NYPD. You secure a crime scene and you get the troops to come in there. I don't care if there's an impending snowstorm, if there's inclement weather going on. That's what we get paid for. We get paid to work for the victim who's laying on that front lawn, which is Police Officer John O'Keefe. And it pissed me off so bad that during this trial, because of the rulings of Judge Beverly Cannoni, you couldn't even call him Police Officer John O'Keefe. And I know it was for a reason, but it just got me so angry. But everything that happened, and not going into that home for the emergency exception rule. And when you have a cop who owns the home, it makes it so much easier to get consent to go into that house, because he should have said, hey, guys, I got kids here. We had a kids party. My son turned 20 or 23, whatever it was. We had a bunch of kids here. I don't know who slept over here, who's in the basement, who's there. Come on in, send in the troops, clear my house. He didn't do that. He didn't even come out. Major red flag.
Yeah. We were talking before the show, and Ed graciously invited us to potentially ask questions of you guys. And I have so many questions. I'd love to turn the tables on you. One question I have to both of you is, having lived across the street from a first responder, I had a firefighter across the street from me before I moved into my current house. And one thing I know is that if there was anything going on that street, I don't care what time of night or day it was, the very first person out of the house was him. And I guess my questions to you guys are, what do you think about the fact that the homeowner didn't come out of his house? What do you think about it's been suggested to me, I've previously, said that I've heard from a lot of law enforcement. I mean, I'm former law enforcement myself, having been a prosecutor, but I have a lot of friends in law enforcement still. And everybody has been sort of uniform in their commentary to me that it doesn't pass the smell test. And I think, something that has never been brought up, but, given the conditions outside and given that a command post has to be set up, what do you think about the fact that the homeowner didn't offer his basement or his garage or his living room as a command post and stop making coffee for people? And, are these crazy issues to raise, or, what's your perspective?
Dave. Not at all. You're spot on. I teach a course for Homeland Security throughout the United States. It's called SPOT. It's called Site Protection Through Observational Techniques. And what we do is we teach police officers to profile behavior. Okay, you have to establish a baseline for where you're working and understand what's the normal behavior for the situation you find yourself in. What's the normal dress? What's the normal behavior for that environment? And then to look for the anomalies. That behavior by that officer in that house does not meet the smell tests. 100%. It's not. And you know who else's behavior didn't? Jen McCabe's. Okay. You're telling me your sister is in there with your brother-in-law and you see John O'Keefe possibly dead on the front lawn of your sister's house. You don't immediately go running in there and find out what's happening. Now, here's what I teach my students, Dave, and this is in your neck of the woods. When you had the Boston bombing, okay, the FBI did put out a bulletin on asking the public for help in identifying white hat and black hat. Right? They had CCTV images from the street of the brothers before the bombing. And one of the images has the younger brother walking along the sidewalk after having deposited his backpack bomb on the sidewalk. His brother's bomb goes off first. What does everybody in the crowd do? Look towards the sound. What does the younger brother do? Continues walking straight without turning around. That's behavior that is not normal. Okay, why? Because he knew that bomb was going to go off. Okay, so it wasn't a surprise to him. Just why Jennifer McCabe didn't go in that house, because it wasn't a surprise to her. Okay, that John was going to be on that front lawn and that there was nothing wrong with her brother-in-law and sister inside the house.
Yeah, and I'm going to add to this police officer Brian Albert at the time, and I believe he was a sergeant at the time in fugitive enforcement. He was on TV. There was shows about this guy. He recently did an interview, and I'm calling bullshit with this. I'm throwing the bullshit flag here. He did an interview recently, I think, with ABC TV. I might be wrong. I'm a little, sometimes I'm a little wishy-washy with that stuff. But he did an interview, and he said, I'm not a Canton police officer. I'm a Boston police officer. This is exact words. So that's what he was asked. It was ABC. Now it's coming to me. He was asked why he didn't come out of that house. And it was a great question that reporter asked him. And he answered it it was so wrong and so not true, because any police officer, and I will tell you this, I've come out in my pajamas in the middle of the night at the stop sign. There was a traffic dispute, fender bender, 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning. I get up, my wife wakes me up, I get out of bed, I take my pistol, I take my cell phone, and I'm out there because it sounded like it was we run to where there's danger. That's what we're trained to do. When the World Trade Center happened, 9/11 happened, I got that phone call and my kids were tugging at my leg. They were little at the time and they were crying. My wife was upset. We left. I ran to that World Trade Center site because that's what we do. So for this homeowner of 34 Fairview, for him to say, Brian Albert, to say that I'm not a Canton police officer, that's bullshit.
Listen, I told you guys off camera before the story. It was 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm in my house off duty. My wife is also an off-duty first grade detective. And we have our first son. He was only 1 year old. And my neighbor's house is being burglarized across the street. And they made a large racket because they took their van and they tied a chain to the garage door and ripped it off with the van. And that woke me up. And I looked and saw the burglary. And I responded. It ended up getting in a shootout. Okay. So that behavior is not normal for first responders. Okay. Yeah. It is totally not real. We always run towards danger. We're always looking to help people. And so that's just total horseshit.
Yeah. And for the commanding officer, who was a lieutenant at the time, to not come out of his house and hand Stop and Shop bags. I know you have your props ready, Ed, to hand Stop and Shop bags and red Solo cups to Lieutenant Gallagher is an insult to the police officer John O'Keefe and an insult to his family, because at where we stand right now, because of this botched investigation, because of this lack of investigation, many people ask us all the time on DutyRon.com on the website, when is justice going to come for John O'Keefe now that Karen Reed is not guilty and, in our opinion, innocent of this crime, but found not guilty by a jury of her peers? I do not think, and I hope that I'm wrong, that we will ever get to the bottom of this thing because of all the mistakes. Ed, as you say, garbage in, garbage out.
Every day, every night.
You can't fix this. You cannot now go back. There could be opportunities, but where are we at here, guys?
Well, here's something I want to bring up to you guys. That shirt, John O'Keefe's hoodie, there's a tool that we have in forensics. It's called the MVAC. And we know the owner and the inventor's son of the device. And it could be used to re-examine the sleeve of John O'Keefe's arm, the right sleeve, where the dog bites occurred. And it uses an aqueous solution and a vacuum system to spray the aqueous materials onto the areas and then vacuum it up. And there's still potential to get genetic profile of whatever caused those marks. And we do believe it's canine. Okay. So we can get potential dog now. He has a cold case where there was a homicide involving a rock, and the person was killed with this rock. They swabbed the rock with the regular swabs. They couldn't get a genetic profile. The rock was put in the property clerks for years, and then they took it out, and then he MVAC'd it, and he got the full profile of the perp off that rock.
40 years later. And
so that shirt can still be re-examined. Another issue, I don't know if you're aware of this, but the edges of the cracked taillight lens could be examined microscopically for the direction of force, so that you could see, was it pushed into the housing or pulled out, as if somebody reached into the cracked area and yanked out. Okay. And then also you could search it for multiple impact sites if a tool was used to further crack the lens. Now, we know that lens wasn't cracked at the time we know it was cracked, but it wasn't to the point where 70 or whatever, the 74 pieces of lenses, whatever it was missing. And you got Sergeant, what was his, Burroughs?
Barrows, yeah.
Sergeant Barrows testified
from another department.
That's not the way he saw that light. Okay. And we know there was no salt and water stains inside the housing. Mm-hmm. So the only way that could occur is that the lens was still intact while this vehicle was being driven around and flatbedded back to the sally port. And then, so whatever happened to that lens happened in that sally port. And all that missing video, as you know, I mean, I'm preaching to the choir here, right? It all stinks to the high heavens.
It's so funny. We have two police officers making the most compelling case for reasonable doubt.
Mm-hmm.
But It's more than reasonable doubt. It's innocent beyond the reasonable doubt.
Agreed.
Yeah. Well, listen, you've got, you want to talk about Massachusetts. You've got on this show Boston's best criminal defense attorney, David Yannetti. David, as you've heard, was a well-regarded, widely acclaimed prosecutor for over 10 years. And I can only begin to imagine, David and I haven't spoken at length about this, but just imagine his perspective of, as a prosecutor, knowing what the right thing is to do and to sit in a courtroom and to listen to someone trying to say that what was done here was appropriate. So you've got Boston's best right here in the other cube. I think no one more astonished than him about what occurred.
Yeah.
Guys, didn't you think it was remarkable that Lieutenant Gallagher's attitude on the stand was that everything that was done was the best that could possibly be done? Like, thank goodness we used Stop and Shop bags. Thank goodness we had the red Solo cups. And boy, a leaf blower. I videoed it because I wanted to show everybody just how good it worked. And
Yeah.
it was almost like he thought he was going to start a national trend that now the NYPD, when they're training homicide detectives, is going to have a leaf blower section of the course. What did you think about his testimony?
Dave, Ed, I want to just stop. Hold the thought. I wrote this down. Lieutenant Gallagher had Sergeant Good video him using the leaf blower to collect evidence. He wanted to memorialize it about how good it worked. And then when he was asked by Hank Brennan, how effective was the leaf blower? I'm going word for word here. He responded, it worked great.
I remember.
Yeah, it's ridiculous and that's why that audit they did of the Canton Police Department, they didn't have a forensic expert, obviously, involved in the audit, because you're introducing a gas-powered leaf blower into your crime scene. Okay, so now you're introducing carbon monoxide and gasoline potentially, right? And now it's the way the gas-powered leaf blower works is it sucks air in one area where your hairs, your fibers, because he wasn't wearing any PPE, okay, your DNA is getting sucked in one end of the leaf blower and blowing out the bottom end. Okay, and that's
such a smart point. Such a smart point.
Potentially cross-contaminating any evidence that may be there. In addition, you're not even thinking about the trace transfer evidence like hairs and fibers. Now you're blowing all that away. Okay, that's not how you process a crime scene like that. Dave, this is how you do it. You grid the whole area, you get a team, you set up a tent for a clean work area, you go in and you shovel the snow into 5-gallon buckets and you go sift the snow, melt it, filter it, and see what's in the snow.
Did you say you melt the snow, Ed Wallace?
Yes, you do. Okay, that's just the way it works.
Just so
Well, that's hard to do, though. That's hard to do in the Northeast because there's storms, Ed. That's what we heard. That's
right,
what
and
we
you
heard.
can't
We did
put
the
up a
best
tent.
we could under storm conditions. So I'd be interested in your response with those impossible conditions that exist perhaps a third of the time of each year in the Northeast. What's your response to that?
You have a tent, you have rope, you have pegs and stakes, you have weights, you weigh down the tent, you put up your sides, you create an area. And if there was cooperation from that location, you could have potentially used the garage, okay, and dropped some tarps down and cleaned it up. But, they weren't going to help you in the first place, okay, because they have their own issues. But you set up your tent, you grid out the area, you scan everything with a 3D laser scanner, which they didn't do. You photograph everything. And if you don't have those assets at that time, you hold the scene, lock it down until you get somebody else that has the capabilities to do the proper job. Remember, it takes less time to explain why you did something right than why you did something wrong.
Amen.
Okay? And
Amen.
if there are standards for this, what's your excuse for not following the standard? Right?
They don't get a pass because it was snowing out?
No, just like in hazmat, like if I do in a crime scene involving a terrorist attack where a chemical weapon was released, I don't get a pass from the judge if I don't document everything to the forensic standard because of that hazardous environment. I have to adapt to that environment.
Here's a note that I took down from that day he testified, and I'm going to play this when we're done. This is just a minute. Lieutenant Gallagher stated on the record, under oath, that he's never had a crime scene in the snow. He used the leaf blower to clear the snow and used red Solo cups to collect blood. From Lieutenant Kelleher, the neighbor, he didn't say across the street, who lived in the neighborhood. Couldn't even say the guy lived directly across the street from 34 Fairview. That is telling. Let's listen to this. It's just a minute. I'm sorry, but I got to do it.
Was concerned. Why was that a decision as far as that being an implement to use in this particular scene?
It was a unique scene. There was snow. I had never processed a scene in the snow. I had seen a leaf blower used in the snow, and it's quite effective at
Or his neighbor clearing a driveway?
being controlled. So that's why it was readily accessible. The scene was debilitating as we were on scene with the weather. Snow was piling up, and I thought that was the best method.
Gentlemen, we saw the video. It's coming up here in about 30 seconds. There was no snow piling up. There was a very small amount of snow. When we talk about snow in the Northeast, especially in New England, you get sometimes a foot or two of snow. Up here, upstate New York, we get it. Buffalo, my sister went to college up in Buffalo. I used to visit her. We used to use a snowmobile to get around. This was no nor'easter happening at the time he was there. Let's take a look and listen to
At that time.
There we go. There was nothing piling up at this point. You could see leaves in that snow, and you could see debris. Ed, I'll let you take over.
So here it is.
See,
You're
it's,
using the leaf blower
moving the snow
to blow off some of the snow to attempt to recover some of the pieces of evidence and uncover blood and pieces of the tailgate. This is
Things are blowing all over the place. Ed, talk about this,
There were
please.
no pieces of the tailgate there, so I don't know where Court TV got that shit
I
from.
shut that off as soon as
Yeah, you're good because it was giving me PTSD. All right. Guys, do you have any other questions or anything else that you want to add?
Chain of custody? What did you think of chain of custody in this case?
Well, first of all, as I said off camera, this wouldn't have gotten into a New York City courtroom. And if it would have gotten into it, then any judge worth their salt would have threw the whole case out because there was no chain of custody. No chain of custody means no evidence. Okay. And the fact that like Sergeant Uri and some of these people, like, oh, there was a chain of custody. Really? Where is it?
Right.
Where is it? Just because you wrote something on an evidence bag, that's not a chain of custody. In
We
fact,
have-
on the stand, he got the wrong shoe, the sneaker.
Exactly. Yeah. We have a treat. We have a retired lieutenant commander from the NYPD, Lieutenant Joseph Cardinale. He commanded the 6-9 precinct detective squad, the gang unit. He's been around. He spent 27 years as many of those years as a boss on the NYPD. Joe, thank you for joining this conversation. Joe Cardinale, Dave and Robert Alessi.
Gentlemen, great job. I mean, it's textbook. It's going to be textbook from now on for what to do and what not to do in situations. But I have to tell you, from a supervisory point of view, this was, as you said, Ed, the cluster. It was the ultimate cluster. Where they come up with this is beyond me. I mean, if I paid a compliment to Ed and Ron and I said, listen, if I'm responding from my house and I know Ed and Ron are there, I know they're going to pick the ball up and run with it until I get there. All right. And I know I have faith in my team to do the right thing. This wasn't even a team. This was just everybody just guessing what to do. And they should have, Proctor, disgusting what he did. I'm glad you guys chewed him up. And throughout this whole case, I just kept repeating over and over, a cop lost his life. And nobody but the defense cares about this. And it was irking me because I've handled cop homicides. I've been on a few of them. And I'm telling you, this would be the priority to find out what's going on. But in the beginning, when the second trial started, I'll tell you right now, the second trial, because you have to go right to the second trial and then go back to the first trial. And you see exactly what everything was all about. And I said, wow. And when Ed broke it down, I said, there is absolutely no way this fits into any kind of, puzzle that's completed. All right. Because there's every piece missing. Chain of custody, give me a break. There was no chain of custody there. Not one iota of chain of custody was there. And that's something that we take very serious in the NYPD. I did. And I would make sure that everything was on the supervisory level was done. And when you have somebody like Ed and somebody like Ron working the case with you, you know what to do with it. I rely on them. Ed tells me what should be done. All right. I might be the supervisor on the scene, but he would come over and say, Lou, I need this to be done. I need this cleared. You got it, Ed. Do your thing, because this is how cases are made. And I was so disgusted that everybody lost sight of the initial, crime here, which is, and that's a cop lost his life. And they tried to go the easy way out and dump it on somebody who didn't have a good recollection of what happened. It was plain for everybody to see that. But gentlemen, you picked them apart. You did a great job with it. I said, man, I wouldn't want to go up against these guys. They're very good. They're very good. And you have a great tag team, between all the defense attorneys. I thought it was outstanding. But I'll tell you right now, they should be ashamed of themselves. And I disagree. I don't think this is the end of this. I think they left the door open for a next inquiry. And there's a lot of answers that still, questions that still haven't been answered. And everybody wants those answers. What really did happen? Why was the door?
I want to ask you something. I know that these two attorneys will want to ask you this question. If you lived across from 34th Avenue and you were the commanding officer of the Canton Police Detective Squad, and a Boston police officer is dead on your neighbor's front lawn across the street, Joe, what are you doing?
I'm out there. I don't care if it's in my underwear. I don't care if it's in a robe. I'm out there handling that scene and securing everything to make sure that that scene is pristine for other people to come in. I'm staying there. I'm not leaving. All right. I'm not leaving. And I'm getting you, Ed, I'm getting crime scene down there. You turn around and tell me you never handled a scene like that before. That tells you something. Then who did handle a scene like this? Call them in there. If you don't know what you're doing, step aside, bring somebody in. I'll use the buzzsaw, guys. Bring Buddy Manade in, all right? Bring him in, may he rest in peace. And when Buddy over there, Buddy, get over here, take care of this, take care of that. We were a team. And if somebody on my team was a bad player, they were benched or they were sent home, all right? And they were never to be heard from again. This should never have happened, all right? And the fact that you guys saw it early in the first trial and carried it to the second trial is outstanding, because this is a disgrace. And I want to just back these guys up on something. A couple of guys questioned this, about Ed and Ron going out there Monday morning quarterbacking this case. Bull crap, all right? Ed and Ron called it for what it was, the way 95% of us did. And you always get those guys out there, oh, cops are never wrong. No, they're dead wrong in this. Dead wrong. And they didn't Monday morning quarterback. They did their job to pick this case apart. And Ed, I saw you get so frustrated during this, and I was laughing a lot of times with this. And I'm saying, I'm writing things down. Oh, Ed's going to be pissed about this one, and he's going to be pissed about that one. But you know what? In the end, justice was served. All right, justice was served. And I really think that this is going to go a little further, because you know what? Never mind recanting. How about recounting stories? All right, there's a little difference for me with that. And I think these guys definitely stepped outside the box. And the fact that nobody's inside that house, you don't know what happened. The dog, the bites. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Now get an odontologist down there. Get somebody down. Call experts in and preserve the scene. All right. But the leaf blower, I mean, I'll never get that out of my mind, Lieutenant Leaf Blower. All right. And also, I'll never get with prejudice out of my mind, too, the way it's been addressed in this case. And I loved it. But you have to step back, let your guys do their job. And if they're not doing it right, bring in the experts. If you don't know what you're doing, call somebody in. Preserve the evidence to bring to trial. Nothing was preserved there. And I think I think a lot of other questions with Higgins and everybody else and Yuri, and they're all still, after Proctor, major flubs on his part. He lost his job, rightfully so. That's not Monday morning quarterbacking, guys. That's calling it the way it is.
Dave,
well,
I know
if I could just add that, it takes courage for police officers like yourself to come out and call the balls and strikes, because not every cop would be willing to do that. I mean, I always said from the beginning that, nothing irks a good cop more than a bad cop. And I've had, officers come up to me and say, look, it just takes one bad cop to make a bad name for 100 good cops. And they get more ticked off than anybody about that. So, I applaud, the three of you for calling it like it is. And I have no doubt that, if you thought that she did it, you wouldn't be taking this stance. You all believe in her innocence because the evidence and the science prove that to you. And that's all that matters.
And I'll add to that also and laud every one of you three. You're doing a public service, right? You're continuing your public service commitment by coming on and calling balls and strikes for two main reasons for me. One, hopefully prevent the shenanigans from happening again. And two, alerting people who are going to be less than careful. It's like, hey, you may think no one's going to find out because you're at a crime scene and no one's going to know, but you could end up being the detectives that are under the microscope, and the Joes, the Eds, and the Rons are going to come on TV and they're going to call you on it. So I think in addition to being courageous, you're doing a public service, and I encourage you to keep doing it.
Thank you.
So I have a question though, guys. I really have a question with this because Ed did bring up a few things during the trial. And I watch these guys. I sit back. I analyze everything. Expert witnesses, and then you have one that was proved to be nothing near expert. Any case that person touched is tainted. As defense attorneys, I'm sure you'll agree that everybody's going to revisit any case that person was on, and they're going to go back to those cases to see, what else they can do with that. It happened in Brooklyn on a couple of cases with cops that they were accused of, strong arming confessions out of people, and it wasn't true. It wasn't true. Some things were true, but if you have 1,000 homicides that you handle, and they prove one time that you did something to somebody, they're going to go back and they're going to open up Pandora's box. And I really think Pandora's box opened up on this case big time. And I think a lot of people are going to have to answer a lot of questions.
Oh, yeah.
Yep, I agree. And the interviews that certain people are giving now aren't helping them. Okay. No. Especially when you say things like you're fighting to get your job back. And then, well, maybe I should have looked at some other cars just to say I did it. Right. Really? Just to say you did it? Mm. That's how it works, right? To cover your ass, just to say that you did it. How about you be a little more objective and open your brain and understand what you're looking at and understand that the forensics does not back what you're saying.
Yeah, it's interesting because I saw that portion of the interview, and even within that question, which is, could you have done something differently? It still was a very myopic vision. He was still focused on it was a car that caused this injury, right? Because he didn't say, I should look at other people and consider other theories. He said, maybe I should have checked out other cars, in addition to the Lexus that Karen Reed was driving. So I found that to be interesting that, even after the fact, there's no awareness that, boy, maybe it's helpful not to narrow your focus right from the word go and just, sort of barrel ass down one particular theory that you've decided it is before you let the evidence take you where you should go.
Yeah, and 16 hours or 17 hours into this, Trooper Proctor wrote in a text message to his friends, not even to other police officers. There were all of his friends. He said, we're going to make this cut and dry. We're going to put it on the girl. She's fucked. 0 chance she skates. And he shared photos of Karen Reed arrested 16 or 17 hours into this investigation. Things weren't even back from the lab. He already was there was a predetermination that Karen Reed was going to catch shit for this case. And he wrote it to not cops. He wrote it to his friends. He was bragging. Trooper Proctor was bragging 16, 17 hours into this that she's fucked. and she's done for. The
Well,
whole
what do you think about him saying that, you know, his emotions got the better of him because it was a fellow cop, and you know he was understandably angry that you know, John O'Keefe was killed, and that was justification for everything that he did and said. What do you think of that?
No, that's bullshit.
Yeah, I'm calling
Okay,
bullshit on that.
He's too comfortable with what he did. And so this isn't the first time he's done this. So I bet you if you look back at other cases that he's been involved in, you'll see a bunch of these text messages with his friends and with his coworkers, because he has those two streams, right? He has the sergeant, lieutenant, and everything. And shame on them for not supervising him properly and saying, hey, this is inappropriate. This is unprofessional. You need to stop this. Okay. And he wasn't disciplined immediately for those texts with his supervisors in it, right? And then the other text with his friends, I'm sure if you dig a little deeper into this, he's done this before, because he was way too comfortable discussing the investigation with non-law enforcement people.
not his first rodeo, that's for sure. So
Ron, I got to tell you something. That, you know, you guys bring up a great point, and that's the whole thing that disgusted me. We're losing sight of the real issue here. We have a dead cop. All right. Sure, you're going to be emotional. It's natural to be emotional. We all get emotional and everything, but you gear that emotion to solve the case, not to cover the asses of everybody who were complicit in this. All right. No matter whether you could say whether they did it or they didn't do it, that he got into a fight with Higgins. There's so much speculation out there. But when you don't give the answers to the most direct questions involving a cop that's dead, and you avoid it, what do you think people are going to suspect you of? And he should have been removed. He shouldn't have been on this case. He was too close to it.
He was tied in. Everybody, all roads lead back to the Alberts. And that's the problem. Small town places like Canton, they have allegiance to people. And because of the brother being on the select board, you have, look, we're already past the hour mark. I'm trying to condense this, but the bottom line here is this was all part of a buddy system, and the buddy system revolved around the Albert family. And they were going to make sure, and we heard it from even Lucky, the snowplow driver. I was giving courtesy, and I was asked to go clear in front of 34 Fairview, because that's another hook that he has in the town, in the highway department. Come and clear my street first, right? So sending, the messages that are sent out there from the Albert family was, none of this is going to come back to us. We're going to make sure the girl gets the charges. And that's why we see what we see. Let's be honest here.
And let's talk about how unreasonable it was for witnesses to collude the way they colluded and set up chat, groups and converse back and forth, right? None of that is reasonable. Right. None of that. I mean, the suspicion, they just put the suspicion right on themselves. And the things they were saying, tell them that he never came in the house. Who's he? The person that you allegedly love?
Yeah,
okay.
It's scary.
I have a question for you all, and that is the cell phones, right? If you're on this case from the jump, especially in 2000, this was 2022. What do you do with everybody? Do you immediately go to the district attorney and you say, I want a preservation order for everyone's cell phones? It was known from the beginning that there was an after party. There'd been a lot of drinking. You talk about securing a crime scene, securing evidence. What about cell phones? You talk about let's separate the witnesses from talking, but how about making sure that their cell phones aren't thrown away as occurred here? What would you do differently to preserve that evidence?
Well, you could under emergency, you could seize the phone and then get the warrant from the judge after you seize the phone to protect potential evidence that may be found in the phone. You could seize it just so that it can't be destroyed and things deleted as it was found in this case with all those deleted messages and phone calls on certain people's phone, and then the destruction of Higgins' phone and the destruction of Albert's phone at the same day, all of that occurring.
I was set
so
for an upgrade. Get out of here. Those things were crazy. Having Brian Higgins go onto a military base and destroying his SIM card, taking an iPhone 11, I believe it was, which is valuable in a resale market. He said that he just threw it away. When I upgrade my phone, I use that phone as credit, so I don't have to pay $1,700 for a phone. I use the old phone as a credit. They give you $300-400, whatever the bullshit they give you. So all of this didn't make any sense. And why do you have to take a SIM card and discard it on a military base or wherever you did this? The whole thing stinks to high heavens, and all roads lead back to this collusion and corruption. And I don't care what anybody says, like, we're all labeled as, this is a delusional collusion. Get at it.
You seize the phone, you stick it in a Faraday bag, you go to the prosecutor, you go to a judge, get the warrant and then you serve the warrant on the cell phone provider, get all the documents and records, dump the phone with the court's approval. Obviously, you're not going to do anything until it's all legal. Okay. But yes, you could seize the phone because you're worried about deletion of evidence that may be in there from everybody that was in that house and at the waterfall at the time, right? All those parties that left the waterfall and went back to that house, all the people that were in the house at that time, maybe even the people that visited the house. Okay. You seize them all, just like you do a canvass of the whole neighborhood and you start, looking for Ring doorbells and cameras, and then you go and ask them with consent to get the images. Okay. And if you have to, you get a court order to get the images. None of that was done here. And what about
Ed? I'm sorry to interrupt you. Think about something though. You're dealing with small town. You have the state police that should have been in here in force, where you have the manpower to go and do all these things. But you're talking about the players that are controlling the crime scene because they know what's about to come. All right. So they know they have to get their ducks in order before they bring in anybody else. And you have the main investigator on site. He's over there saying, don't worry, guys, I'm taking it from here, even though it's the next morning and everything. It's ridiculous. The state police should have flooded that area because I'm bringing in all the manpower I need. I know I'm getting on the phone with the chief saying, Chief, I need X, Y, and Z. There's a dead cop here. And I'm going to have the whole city down there. Granted, NYPD had the luxury.
Joe, let me stop you just for a second, Joe, because Norfolk County District Attorney Squad is 4 members. There's 4 detectives. I think 2 or 3 supervisors. It's a small little group of guys. So this is not like what we are used to, where we have 50, 20. You can get a task force together in a heartbeat in the NYPD and have 100 detectives working on a case. Arguably, it doesn't happen often, but what I'm saying is the manpower that was working on this case was a band of 4. These were all
I understand. What I'm telling you is the manpower that was working on this case were the people that were in that house. That's the manpower that were working on it on the other side of what should have been done. All right. The CYA on this was working in their favor because they had time. They knew the resources weren't there to do the right thing. Anybody who had, especially Higgins, he knew all that. So when you sit back and you say they had time was on their side, it absolutely was on their side. What I was saying was, if you are a supervisor that really wants to see justice done in that small town, you call the state police and say, I need manpower. I don't care who you have to bring in. Get me manpower here to preserve this crime scene. I have a dead cop here.
Gentlemen,
that's the bottom line.
May I ask a question about the hospital, the emergency room? There was a Mass State Police crime scene investigator that was there, okay, who photographed the clothing and John O'Keefe and gave bags to Proctor and Sergeant Uri to put the clothing in. Right. First of all, the clothing wasn't packaged correctly. That's one thing. So why didn't the crime scene investigator take the clothing? Why does the crime scene investigator not do that in this jurisdiction?
I was actually going to ask you guys that because remember, I think the testimony was that the clothing was not brought to the crime lab for. Now I can't remember whether it was 4 weeks, 6 weeks, a couple of months, 3 months. It was weeks later And I believe there was, the alleged taillight debris was in the bottom of the bag when it was brought there. And as you guys have brought up, that there was no indication of chain of custody. Who had access to that? Right. What was done to it? I mean, these were all questions I think that were properly raised at trial, right?
Right. Now,
the clothing was on the floor in the ambulance. It was on the floor at the hospital. It ended up mixed together in I think Buchanan testified about, laying it out. No chain of custody. Even at trial, when I was cross-examining Maureen Hartnett, you may recall, she was literally pulling things out of the evidence bag. And she couldn't account for pieces of taillights. I don't know what this is. I mean, it was incredible from start to finish.
In our jurisdiction, if I was at the hospital, I would have seized the clothes. I would have separated the clothes. I wouldn't allow them to remain commingled. I would have packaged them individually, and I would have brought them directly to the lab. I would not have given it to the detective to take back to the district attorney's office and do whatever he wants with it. No, when I go there, it's mine. I take it and I'm going to bring it to the lab, and then it's going to go into a drying chamber. And there could be nefarious reasons. I believe there are nefarious reasons for why certain individuals want to control over certain items of evidence.
Yeah. Hey, David, I wanted to ask you in trial number one, Trooper Proctor in his text messaging revealed he had some deep hatred for you. And I remember your partner, Mr. Jackson, made a mention of it. And he said, it's probably not the exact words. He said, my partner's right over there, or Mr. Alessi's right over there. You said in here, I believe I wrote down that he has deep hatred for you to his friends. What kind of how are you? Obviously, you wanted to probably jump over the table, but obviously you couldn't do that. But I just wanted to get your thoughts on, trial one, and then in trial two, it came up as well. How are you feeling about that? I know people want to know. I'm only asking you because I saw it in the chat several times. People were asking. So how did you guys handle that? Obviously you intentionally brought it up, but how was that handled?
So I knew it was coming because I knew the content of those text messages. But what I didn't know was coming was that, I believe Alan asked him, all right, well, this is what you said about Yannetti in these text messages. How do you feel about him now? He's sitting right there. And I think Proctor's response was, well, I still don't care for him. Even like yesterday or a few days ago, he went to my sister's school and tried to intimidate my sister or something like that. And, they asked him to leave and he wouldn't leave. And it was all made up. I've been a lawyer for 36 years. I've only done, criminal cases my whole career on both sides of the fence. There've been plenty of times when I, suspect or even believe that I know that a witness is lying. But this was one where I was a witness to what happened that day. And what Proctor was testifying to was a lie. Now, I don't know if he was lying or if somebody gave him information that he took to be gospel, or if he just exaggerated what he had heard. I don't want to give him the benefit of the doubt, but I also want to say that, I don't know where it came from, but, the Canton police were actually called to the parking lot where I met the witness at that time, because, I think somebody had said, one of Karen Reed's lawyers is here. And he wrote a report that, said that, Mr. Yannetti met with Lucky Locker and the plow driver. They chatted for a few minutes and they left without incident. He never looked at the school. He never talked to anybody. That report existed. We didn't have it, but it existed at that moment when Proctor was testifying, and it completely contradicted what he said. And, the truth of the matter is I don't know Canton. I'm not from there. I'm from the North Shore of Boston. The North Shore and the South Shore sometimes don't meet. So, I just went where Lucky Loughlin told me to meet him, which was kind of near the crime scene. So that was and the camera didn't show me, but at counsel table, I went like this. I mean, I was like, I cannot believe what I'm hearing now.
Unbelievable.
Gentlemen, you've been more than gracious with your time. I know, Bob, you guys need to go. We've been at this now for a little over an hour and a half. And, I want to thank you for your presence. There's so much more we wish we could discuss with you, and that you could, back and forth with us, ask us questions and so forth, because there's so many different things about this case that are so unusual to our both experiences, that we can just go on for hours about.
I wanted to ask about Kelly Dever, before we let them go. I have to bring this up. I know that this was a quick way to segue out, and look, we have a live audience here. I want to thank the live audience for being kind and generous to our guests, for supporting the defense team, for supporting Karen Reed, for supporting the content creators like myself and Ed and Andrea Burkhart in the chat. I saw Melanie Little before. Many content creators come on and support us because, look, we're all doing this together. And as you said, Dave, this is a calling. We're doing this, and Rob, you said it too. Bob, the bottom line is we want to educate that there are good cops out there. There are good investigators out there that do this and lay their lives on the line day in and day out. But it's these bad apples. Any good cop hates a bad cop. And when we saw Kelly Dever come on that stand as a rookie, she's a rookie. And Joe, you're a boss. If you don't have more than 5 years on the job, you're a rookie. Some people might argue you need a decade before you can get off that rookie list. She came in with an attitude. Alan Jackson asked her, "Do you want to be here?" And it was clear and evident that she didn't want to be there. And she had the audacity to say that she didn't know why she was there. But she was brought into the police commissioner's, the PC's office, and given the talk to. I don't know any rookies that get called into the PC's office, with the exception of a guy like Ed Wallace, because he's solving cases left and right. Police commissioners don't just invite some 2-year wonder into their office to talk to them before they testify. But I wanted to go, Bob, starting with you, and then down to Dave on your thoughts on Kelly Dever. Or is it Dever?
Well, I understand it's Dever, and she will correct you very quickly with regard to the proper pronunciation. All I can say is I'm an officer of the court. She's a public servant. You have an obligation to comport yourself in a certain way, no matter the circumstance. Be a professional, understand your role when you're in the courtroom. Her role was to answer questions to the best of her ability, honestly, so that the jury could make the best decision possible. I did not once get the sense that she had any thought of what her proper role was. She came into the courtroom to me as to do a hit job. And that is what I felt when I sat there. I was disgusted. I felt that the jurors were being deprived of information that they needed. I leave it to others more experienced than me, like the folks that are on this show, as to what's the likelihood that a 2-year police officer is going to be called into the police commissioner's office for anything. That certainly was unusual, but I was offended greatly because she didn't perform her public service and her duty to come in and just answer questions and tell the truth. It was very clear she had an agenda, and that is never appropriate in a courtroom.
And I would just add a couple things. As a longtime defense attorney now, I think Officer Dever is going to have problems the rest of her career by virtue of the fact that she just testified that she has false memories. I think that's a big problem for her. Oh, yeah. Secondly, I thought that whenever you have an adverse witness who testifies like she did, it's a gift to the defense. I thought that our experts and the expert manner in which Bob, examined them, was a stark contrast to the Commonwealth's experts. And our witnesses from, Sergeant Barrows to Lucky Loughran to Karina Kolakithis, just salt of the earth people.
Yeah.
You contrast that to Kelly Dever, I'm sorry. Sergeant Barrows versus Officer Dever. I mean, the defense versus the prosecution. It's just a small window into, the reason why this case ended as it did, I think.
Yes, the dichotomy could not be more exaggerated than what you just showed. It was night and day, night and day. Professionalism versus non-professionals, people that weren't less than truthful versus people that were obviously truthful. So again, gentlemen, I can't thank you enough. I wish we had more time.
Yeah,
we loved it. It was really an honor for, I'll speak for Bob on this. I think he'll agree. It was an honor for us to be here.
It certainly was, and you guys are absolute professionals. And I just want to end with my adulation and absolute thankfulness for the whole content creator community out there. Keep doing what you're doing. You're all at the top of your game. It is such a great service to the community, to the public. And I am just so impressed with everybody. And I'm most impressed with how collegial you are to each other, how supportive you are of each other. I don't sense competitiveness. I sense people who are very good at what they do, continually supporting each other. I think it's just fabulous.
amen to that. And we want to thank you on behalf of the entire online community, and especially the Crime Time with DutyRon community. Both you gentlemen and the rest of your team, including Miss Little and Alan Jackson, you guys did a great job. And you not only did a great job, you communicated with the supporters. And that's what was really, I think that was key. People from all over the world have nothing but love for you guys. And I know there's always going to be haters out there, but at the end of the day, the love outweighs the hate. And I always, before I let you guys go, I want to just, again, say prayers, strength, and positive vibes to the O'Keefe family to find justice for their loved one. I hope and pray that somewhere down the line that they get to the bottom of who, in fact, killed their loved one, Police Officer John O'Keefe. And I think that's what we're left with here today. And if you guys don't mind, we'd love to have you back another time at your convenience, because we have a lot more to talk about. I have 4 more pages that I didn't even cover with you guys.
Well, we greatly enjoyed it, and amen to everything you just said.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And I put my number in the private chat. So please, anytime you need it, anything,
I'll give it to Dave, because I have Dave's cell, and I'll send him yours. He's got mine, and we share. Ed's available at any time if you have cases down the line, providing we don't talk about them.
Please send that information to David. Thank you.
You got it. Good night, gentlemen.
Okay. All right. Take care, guys.
Good night, everybody.
There they go. All right, listen, that was an unbelievable show, and I want to apologize to the chat because I couldn't stop for the super chats, but I'm going to go over them now. And I had actually 15 questions, and I wanted to take in live callers, but on the second time when these guys join us, if they come back for a second round, I promise you we're going to take live call-ins, and we're going to read all your chat, and your messages. I hope that we did answer a lot. Ed, anything that you didn't get to talk to them about that maybe you want to just surmise here, and then we'll go to Joe?
No, I was just hoping, there were so many different things. This case is so full of different areas to talk about, and I was, I wanted to, open up the floor to them to ask a lot more questions of us than they were able to. But I think by and large, it was a great, great show. And I loved having them there. I learned a lot, and, got to see, that they are true professionals, and the justice was on their side. They proved their client innocent, which is not their job, right? There is not their job to do that, but they did it. It was like a Perry Mason moment in, where they were able to use the science and the medical findings to get to the truth of the matter,
Right.
that their client did not hit Officer John O'Keefe with that car.
Yeah.
And there's a much larger nefarious thing going on here.
Yeah, and it's called the Albert Clan. I got a very good sense of they were good. These are good human beings, and it's the first time we met Dave and Bob. Dave and Bob they're the kind of guys that I could hang out with, even though they can run circles around me in smartness. You know what I mean? They're smart people, but they're regular people, and they care, and they care about their clients. And look, we saw the emotion on Dave's face in court. You don't see many attorneys have moments like that. So I think it was, quite clear and evident of what kind of people they are. So I'm thankful that we got to meet with them. And Joe, I'm thankful that you came on as a lieutenant commander to give your perspective, because it was important for us to highlight that the commanding officer of the Canton Police Detective Squad lived across the street and didn't freaking come out of his house. Not once.
Absolutely. I watch the comments and everything, and you get some idiots out there that make some comments to you guys all the time. But the bottom line is, you can't refute everything that Ed did. Ed took it apart piece by piece. You took it apart piece by piece from the beginning. And when the three of us did have conversation, whether it be by, text messaging or anything, it stunk from the beginning to the end. And we're still not any closer right now. I hope somebody does, to solving John O'Keefe's murder. And what I was trying to bring up just very quickly was, I believe Canton is only 20 miles from Boston. Why didn't they? Boston's got a large contingent. Why didn't they seek to?
I said it.
And it doesn't make sense to me that you would contain it to a group of people who are covering their asses. All right. And there's no other way to put it.
Yeah.
But I have to tell you something. They cannot say anything about you guys to me, first of all, because like I said before, I'm home and I have to have somebody at the scene. I want you two guys there until I get there. And that's the bottom line, because I know it's going to be done. And you're going to be getting those cell phones. You're going to be in that house talking to people. And if not, you're going to detain anybody who tries to leave that house.
They didn't detain anybody. They didn't interview anybody. There was no reports. I didn't even get a chance to mention some of the state police reports were handed in 200, 300, 400, and 500 days later. That we didn't even get a chance to talk about that. What police department on this earth, what state police, what local police department puts in updated or old reports that should have been filed 400, 500 days in the past?
And Ed, let me ask you this, Ed, because I'm sitting at home going, how many times are they going to revisit this crime scene? All right. Like, does this guy wake up in the morning, get his cup of coffee and say, hon, I think I'm going to go back to the crime scene, see what else I could dig up over there. It's only been a week, 5 days. But I mean, who does this? All right. And it just irks me that they're playing games with a cop, a cop that was murdered. All right. And that cop was murdered. No matter how you look at it, he was murdered. And if something, let's just take the extreme. Say there was a fight in that house and they said, John, get the hell out of here. And they threw him out and he goes outside and he passes out over there, whatever it is. Nobody could say that. They're all too worried about, this isn't going to look good. Come on, there's got to be answers to these things. And I hope somebody on a higher level starts digging for these answers.
It's interesting because 4 jurors have come forward and they're giving interviews and they're all saying that the feds need to get in here and investigate this.
Yeah.
And several of them are outright saying something happened in that house.
Yeah.
These are the jurors. These are the jurors who believe Karen is innocent. And they're saying this. Okay. And yes, this investigation has to go forward and it has to be done outside of the Commonwealth, and the feds really do need to step in here and get their shit together and get in there and tear this thing apart.
Well, Ed, to that note, just so you know, I think that's what I was trying to get at before.
Yeah.
They didn't bring Boston into this, Boston PD, because they knew Boston PD would handle it different and get the answers that were needed for one of the cops being dead.
Right,
So,
and that's why
they covered, they did what they had to do beforehand, knowing that they can only go so far with things like this. But you know what? Like you said, the science just didn't add up.
Doesn't
And
lie.
science adds up for other things that should be readdressed.
that's why Jen McCabe didn't tell 911 that this was a cop on the front lawn, because she knew then that all the troops would be coming, and she
Yes,
couldn't
ma'am.
control what happened with all the cops. And that's why the small group of detectives in that prosecutor's office didn't call the crime scene unit. They called the search team.
Sir.
Okay, because they wanted control of what was going to happen here.
Makes me
That's
sick.
why they didn't give the evidence from the hospital. Let the crime scene investigator take the clothing right from the hospital to the lab.
Right.
That's why they took the clothes back to the district attorney's office for control of what was going to happen with that clothing. It stinks to the high heavens.
It stinks all over the place. Listen, we got to wrap it up. Joe, I want to thank you for joining. Ed, I want to read the super chat, so I'm going to let Joe go when we do that.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah, you are a professional. You're a friend. We appreciate you. And please come back as much as you want. Anytime. You always got an open invite here. Lieutenant Commander Joe Cardinale, retired NYPD, 27 years on the job.
Thank you, guys. You
Thanks, Joe.
hang in there. Great job. Great job.
There he goes, Joe Cardinale. Ed, unbelievable show. You did a great job with, talking with the attorneys. I appreciate you. I know it was a lot to go over, a lot to get through. We're going to do round 2 with them, hopefully. I should have said that to Bob, because he's a boxer. He'd been like, round 2. Yeah, let's go.
Did you check? Did you see the PC?
I'm sorry?
Did you see the private chat?
No?
Okay,
I
please.
see. Cell phone. That's all. I just see the cell phone.
You don't see anything else?
No.
Okay, something. Oh, hold on. It didn't go. Never mind. I text you. I'm sorry.
Okay, I'll look at my phone.
All right. So let's see. Bring up the. Okay.
There.
Got it. Okay, Coral and Dexter, thanks for the $5. If the taillight doesn't fit, you must have quit. Okay, a la O.J. Simpson. I like it. I like it. What else you got there? Okay, more Carol and Dexter, member for 9 months. Thank you for your membership for 9 months. Okay, Matthew Bradford, thanks for your $5. Number
49 to go.
49 to go. Okay, gotcha. All right. All right. Blissfulance, $5. Hi.
A bunch of new members came in. Thank you for your membership. Thank you for becoming a new member. Frank, Bruce. There's a lot here, Ed. I think that it would take us another hour to go through.
Yeah, just thank you, folks. Thanks for everything. We're sorry we didn't get to it.
A big, large thank you to everybody for these super chats. They don't go unnoticed. On a show like this, where we have these guests that have limited time, it's really hard for us to read them all out. And I know that you guys, we owe you. We'll read them out. What happened, Ed? What's the matter?
Nothing.
All right, relax, Ed. It's not the end of the world. All right, we're going to get through this. We want to thank you all for joining. We will be back with some live coverage of Brian Kohlberger. There's a lot of things going on in that case. We're going to be covering it next. And we want to thank you guys all for being here tonight for an hour and 45 minutes. On behalf of Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed Wallace, we're going to wish you guys a good evening. Ed, I know you always got something to say at the end of these. Let's do it.
Folks, thanks for being here. Thanks for sharing your time with us. We know you can get your true crime fix anywhere you like on the internet. It was an amazing show tonight. Thank you for your support. Always stay safe, stay prepared, and watch your six.
Amen to that. Good night, everybody.